The road ahead will not be easy, but I have faith in the resilience of our people, in their ability to adapt and overcome. Thank you, and good night.
The world stage was set. Only a few years ago was the entire known world under one government. Now there are over 50 nations. In Central Europe, countries started pushing outward toward the Alps, taking whatever land was still empty. No battles yet, but borders were moving fast, and everyone knew it probably wouldn't stay peaceful for long. Down south, the Kingdom of Rome kept moving. Their forces expanded deeper into Italy, securing territory bit by bit. Then, Budapest made the first real aggressive move. The Kingdom of Budapest invaded the Republic of Northern Budapest, a smaller neighbor that honestly never stood much of a chance. The attack was quick. Within a few weeks, it was over. Northern Budapest was fully annexed, wiped off the map, and suddenly everyone across Europe started realizing the wars had begun. Not long after, another war hit Eastern Europe. The First Prussian-Warsaw War would begin. Prussia invaded the Kingdom of Warsaw after months of political tension boiling over. At first, Prussian forces pushed forward fast, gaining ground and looking confident. But Warsaw didn't fold. They regrouped, counterattacked hard, and dragged the war into something Prussia wasn't really ready for. Back home, support collapsed, protests grew, and Prussia was forced into a peace deal, giving up land and walking away with a bad reputation to other Eastern European nations. Meanwhile, in the north, Hamburg expanded into old Danish territory. They even reached Copenhagen Island, settling in it quickly. But the settlers had other plans. Almost as soon as a stable population formed in Copenhagen, they declared independence, creating the Danish state overnight. Hamburg found itself dealing with a breakaway state that eventually they just gave up. Out in northwestern Iberia, borders were shifting fast. The Porto Directorate, the Kingdom of Galicia, the Northern Spanish Republic, and the Kingdom of Bilbao were all pushing inland, grabbing deserted land wherever they could. Nobody trusted anyone, and it was only a matter of time before somebody crossed a line. That line got crossed when tensions between Porto and Galicia finally snapped. Porto struck first. Galicia dug in and tried to hold, but Porto's whole strategy was simple: keep hitting without giving them time to breathe. Then things escalated. The Kingdom of Lisbon jumped into the war, calling Porto a regional threat. Their troops pushed north fast, getting dangerously close to Porto's capital, and suddenly turning what looked like a two-sided war into something way bigger. Madrid stepping in made it even messier. They weren't exactly friends with Porto, but having the same enemies made strange alliances. Madrid invaded from the south, reclaiming stretches of coastline they'd lost before, and putting serious pressure on Lisbon. Galicia eventually tapped out. They lost land in the south, but survived as a country. Lisbon tried to push for peace too, but by then they were too deep in the fight. Porto and Madrid linked up, focused everything on Lisbon, and after a brutal push, Lisbon collapsed. Even the Fourth Portuguese Republic showed up at the last second. When the dust settled, Lisbon was gutted. Most of its southern territory went to Madrid, a chunk went to Porto, and what was left became a Porto puppet. Iberia wasn't stable before. Now it definitely wasn't. The First Roman War kicked off when northern Rome finally declared war on the Kingdom of Rome after years of political tension. Umbria backed Rome immediately and sent troops straight to the front. At first, nothing really moved. Both sides dug in. Rome's forces started pushing north bit by bit. It wasn't fast, and it definitely wasn't clean. Just constant fighting and steady pressure. In the end, northern Rome agreed to peace. They only gave up a small amount of land. It was a short first war, but definitely not the last. While all that was happening, Moscow stayed quiet publicly but busy behind the scenes. They started expanding again, mostly toward the northeast, following old pre-collapse maps trying to reach the Rybinsk Reservoir. The directions weren't good, so they didn't make it there, but it didn't really matter. They still walked away bigger than anyone else. At this point, Moscow was easily the largest nation in the known world. Across Eastern Europe, expansion fever was everywhere. Prussia and Warsaw were the most aggressive, constantly racing each other for land, with countries like Czechia doing the same wherever they could. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Nice pulled off the biggest sea expedition anyone had seen since the apocalypse. They reached Corsica, landed, and took the whole island almost immediately. But holding it was another story. Less than a year later, the population there declared independence. Nice didn't really have the ability to stop it, and just like that, the Kingdom of Corsica became a nation. The Kingdom of Northern Rome wasn't done after the First War. They pushed a rumor that Rome had secretly helped Corsica break away from Nice. It wasn't true, but it spread fast enough to cause real tension. Nice bought it. Between anger over Corsica and pressure at home, they aligned with Northern Rome and declared war on Rome. Just like before, Umbria backed Rome immediately and sent troops to help hold the line. The Second Roman War began. Rome actually gained ground early, pushing north again like they had in the First War. But once Nice's forces fully arrived, that momentum stopped. The front stabilized pretty quickly after that. From there, it turned into a grind. Fortifications went up, offensives slowed down, and neither side could land a decisive hit. It became one of those wars where everyone's fighting, but nobody's really winning. Then everything flipped. Rome released solid proof showing they had nothing to do with Corsica's independence, like actual evidence. Corsica itself even backed it up publicly. That hit Nice's government hard. Parliament was split, many heated arguments, but eventually they made the call to switch sides. On the battlefield, it was messy, but Nice ultimately joined Rome's front. That shift opened the door for another player. Milan, which had bad history with Northern Rome already, decided this was their moment. They declared war and moved in fast. Their front linked up with Nice's forces, which suddenly gave Rome's side a western attack route Northern Rome hadn't prepared for. Pressure started building from multiple directions. Northern Rome started collapsing. Resources ran thin, morale dropped, and the multi-front pressure kept getting worse. Eventually, they capitulated. The treaty was heavy. Nice and Milan both walked away with land, Umbria got compensation for its losses, and Rome annexed the rest outright. Northern Rome had died, just like that. Meanwhile, in northeastern Iberia, expansion kept rolling. Barcelona and Bordeaux pushed inland far enough that their territories actually connected, linking the east and west of northern Iberia for the first time since the collapse. Out of nowhere, the Kingdom of the Sudetenland launches a surprise invasion into the Kingdom of Czechia. Their new leader is openly war-hungry, and there hadn't really been major tensions before this. Sudetenland forces push in fast from the west, using blitz and encirclement tactics. The Battle of Prague ends in a narrow Sudetenland victory, but after that, Czechia adapts quickly. Their defenses harden, and they shift strategy. They simply have more manpower, resources, and money. They can afford losses that the Sudetenland can't. Czechia begins a slow, brutal campaign forward. Sudetenland keeps trying quick breakthroughs and encirclements, but it doesn't hit the same anymore. The Second Battle of Prague turns into a week-long battle. Czechia eventually takes it back. From there, they keep wearing down Sudetenland's army. Then suddenly, Czech forces combine several extra divisions just north of Prague and launch a heavy strike. The line collapses almost instantly. Sudetenland retreats fast, far enough to avoid getting encircled, eventually falling back behind their own border. Czechia keeps pushing. The Battle of Zwickau ends with the Sudetenland capital falling, and the country surrenders. Czechia annexes significant territory, mostly in the south, and Sudetenland is forced to pay heavy reparations for the next decade. The Paris Apocalyptic Authority, basically the original surviving nation, makes a third attempt to plan an expedition to Britain. The first ended in disaster decades ago, when a failed boat mission killed former President Hans-Peter Gunther. The second attempt never even launched. Now they try again. A ship carrying about 500 soldiers heads toward Britain, still considered a deserted island. But once again, out of nowhere, a violent storm hits. The ship never reaches Britain, and never returns to the P.A.A. either. The third attempt ends just like the first, a total failure. Meanwhile, the race to claim deserted lands is heating up, especially between the rival kingdoms of Warsaw and Prussia. A lot of Eastern European nations are expanding, but Prussia, Warsaw, Budapest, and Moscow are leading the push. Eventually, border tensions between Prussia and Warsaw spill over into the Second Prussian-Warsaw War. Prussia strikes first, mainly advancing south in the northeast, where the newly claimed land is still lightly defended. Warsaw responds hard, throwing multiple divisions into that area. In the west, Prussia makes slower progress, but gets a little too close to the city of Warsaw. Neither side can keep the momentum for long, though. The war turns into a grind, and before it drags on too far, both sides agree to peace. Prussia gains some territory in the west, Warsaw gains some in the east. A short war, lasting less than a year. Further south, expansion continues across the Italian peninsula. Rome in particular pushes southward and around Umbria, picking up more deserted territory. And over in Central Europe, the Kingdom of Budapest finally overstretches. It had grown too large to hold together. 4 new nations break away: the Kingdom of Croatia, the Kingdom of Belgrade, the Kingdom of Timisoara, and the Transylvanian state. As you know, the P.A.A. was the original nation that rose right after the post-apocalypse. When it eventually collapsed, a lot of today's countries were born out of it. Even after rebranding and rebuilding, plenty of nations still don't trust them, especially their neighbors. Decades ago, there was already a coalition against the P.A.A. made up of the Kingdom of the Rhineland, the Sixth French Republic, and the Republic of Greater Luxembourg, which was and is a French puppet. That alliance never really had a name, but now it finally would. That group, now joined by Normandy, declares war, forming what would be known as the First P.A.A. Coalition. But the P.A.A. isn't caught off guard. Their spy network is easily the best around, and they saw this coming from far away. And unlike the past, they're not weak anymore. The P.A.A. has grown fast, richest economy, biggest population, and possibly the strongest military in the known world. This time, they're ready. Their first move is obvious: Normandy. It's isolated compared to the others, and the P.A.A. hits it all at once. Normandy's army just can't keep up. The campaign moves fast, and Normandy capitulates pretty quickly. The P.A.A. turns south toward France and goes straight for the capital. The attacks are constant, heavy pushes, non-stop pressure, trying to break French defensive lines before they can stabilize. France calls Luxembourg for support, ordering their troops to reinforce the capital region. Luxembourg follows through, but it leaves their own country thinner than it should be. The P.A.A. gets several divisions and slams straight into Luxembourg. The first hit shatters the defensive line almost immediately. Some Rhineland troops are there too, but nowhere near enough to stop what's coming. P.A.A. forces rush in, take the capital fast, and Luxembourg capitulates, just like that. They expand even more, using the opportunity, spearheading south. France and the Rhineland are now split apart. France has to face the P.A.A. mostly alone, and the Rhineland suddenly has a much smaller front to work with. Plus, a bunch of their troops are stuck inside French territory with no way back. The P.A.A. keeps the pressure on and eventually pushes straight into the French capital. The city falls without much trouble. France doesn't surrender, but at this point they're barely holding a stable defensive line together. Seeing France slipping, the Rhineland gets desperate. They try convincing the Kingdom of Netherlands to join the war, but Netherlands stays neutral. So the Rhineland makes a risky call. They invade anyway, planning to push through Netherlands territory and get behind P.A.A. defenses. It almost works at first. Rhineland forces advance well into Western Netherlands. But the P.A.A. reacts fast again. Their troops intercept midway, stopping the push before it can turn into anything bigger. Now the coalition just has another enemy. At that point, it's clear the war isn't going their way. The coalition agrees to peace, and the terms are rough. Normandy is fully annexed by the P.A.A. Luxembourg was pulled out of French control and restored as the Kingdom of Greater Luxembourg. France loses significant territory. and the Rhineland ends up paying massive reparations, not just to the P.A.A., but to Netherlands too. The first P.A.A. coalition ends with a P.A.A. victory. Southern and central Iberia kept shifting as nations pushed inland into deserted territory. A lot of countries joined that rush, but Madrid was easily the most aggressive. Their borders kept creeping bigger year after year, slowly turning empty land into controlled territory. Up in Germany, tensions finally snapped. The German state invaded the Kingdom of Berlin after years of trade fights, bad diplomacy, and just straight-up resentment building. Berlin wasn't alone, though. The Kingdom of East Berlin jumped in immediately on their side. On paper, Berlin looked stronger, but the German state came in far more prepared than anyone expected. They moved fast, blitz-style pushes, barely giving Berlin time to react. Soon, the fighting reached the city of Berlin itself. That battle got ugly, easily the bloodiest since the apocalypse. Heavy losses on both sides. In the end, the German state took the city. After that, the rest of the front collapsed pretty quick. Berlin capitulated first, East Berlin not long after. The treaty was huge. The German state annexed both countries entirely. Neighbors weren't happy about it at all, and unrest inside Berlin became a problem for the German state. Meanwhile, in the east, two major expansion campaigns kicked off at the same time, one across Eastern Europe into the Ukraine and Baltic regions, the other down in the Balkans. This wasn't supposed to turn into chaos, though. The Warsaw Conference brought together a wide range of nations, from Rome all the way to Moscow, agreeing to expand only into deserted land and to peacefully release any population that genuinely wanted independence. It led to rapid growth, and within just a few years, a bunch of entirely new countries showed up across those regions. Then the second P.A.A. coalition formed. The Rhineland, Greater Luxembourg, and the French Apocalyptic Authority, the F.A.A., teamed up against Paris. The P.A.A. basically ran the same opening play as last time, hit the isolated country first. The F.A.A. was separated in the west, while the others were in the east, so Paris set defensive lines in the east and launched a fast offensive west. It worked. Blitz pushes, encirclements, cutting armies off before they could regroup. The F.A.A. collapsed fast. They never really had a chance. Now, Paris only had one front left, but that didn't last long. Two more countries joined the coalition, the Sixth French Republic and the Kingdom of Bern. They had a reputation as the peacekeeper, neutral, stable, rarely involved in wars. So when they joined, it carried a lot of meaning. Their statement hit even harder. They openly called the P.A.A. a fast-growing expansionist threat and said their involvement was meant to push other nations to act before it was too late. And it worked. More countries started stepping in. Nice joined. They couldn't send troops immediately, but financially they became huge, funneling aid through old underground tunnel networks. Amsterdam and its puppet Antwerp joined too, but with their own angle. Since the Kingdom of Netherlands had backed the P.A.A. last time, Amsterdam declared war on Netherlands directly, calling them a threat in itself. Netherlands couldn't hold. Hit from two directions, they got swept pretty quickly. Once that front closed, Amsterdam could shift troops toward the main fight. On the main front, Paris pushed hard into the Sixth French Republic from the west and took the capital without too much trouble. But the eastern side was a different story. Rhineland, Nice, and Amsterdam troops dug in there, forcing the P.A.A. into a slower advance. The coalition had the manpower edge now, and they started pushing back wherever they found weak spots. The biggest scare for the P.A.A. came from the north, Amsterdam and Antwerp troops getting uncomfortably close to Paris. Then the south broke open too. Nice and French forces managed to retake the French capital, then rolled southwest and liberated the F.A.A. coalition. Troops regrouped near Paris and launched a massive coordinated assault from multiple directions. The Battle of Paris was brutal, huge losses on both sides. But the P.A.A. held. Coalition forces eventually had to pull back, and Paris quickly moved to retake the F.A.A. territory, like the setback never even happened. Eventually, both sides were exhausted enough to accept peace talks. The treaty was messy. Paris annexed the P.A.A. permanently, France regained some lost land, and Paris agreed to pay reparations to coalition nations. Not ideal for them, but worth it in the grand scheme of things. So the second P.A.A. coalition ended. Basically a draw. Nobody really won. Both sides lost one ally. And tensions were definitely not over. The Balkans were up next. Expansion into deserted lands happened fast, stretching all the way to Bulgaria and Albania. As armies moved in, new nations emerged almost instantly. Unlike the chaos elsewhere, these new countries mostly declared independence peacefully, taking what they could without war. Across the Mediterranean, the Kingdom of Rome made history by landing in Tunisia. This marked the first time the known world had expanded outside of Europe, a bold move that would mean a lot more in the future. Meanwhile, the Crown and Cross Confederacy, a rogue nation with no centralized government, set its sights on Gibraltar. They came from the east, pushing south into the territory. The fight wasn't long. Gibraltar lost its capital quickly and surrendered. The Confederacy annexed the country entirely, inheriting a mess of unrest that would take years to stabilize. The third P.A.A. coalition kicked off like a storm. Over a dozen nations declared war, convinced the P.A.A. had grown too powerful to ignore. Kingdoms and republics lined up. Umbria, Milan, Venice, Nice, Lyon, Bern, Bordeaux, Galicia, Rhineland, Amsterdam, Antwerp, Friesland, Brussels, and Greater Luxembourg. Moscow was technically part of the coalition too, but they didn't send troops, keeping their involvement only political. The front lines were enormous, stretching across multiple nations. The war ended quickly, very violently. Paris forces were smashed from all sides. Paris fell, the government collapsed, and the P.A.A. officially capitulated. No one wanted a comeback from them. The memory of past oppression was still very alive. Even though Paris survived in name, it was a shadow of its former self. Normandy and the P.A.A. rose from the ruins, alongside the new Kingdom of Brittany. Most of the P.A.A.'s land was gone, its cities shattered, money wiped out, trade blocked. Its people were exhausted, left with basically nothing after the third P.A.A. coalition. A year after the third coalition, the fourth P.A.A. coalition began. It was meant to be the final strike, the ultimate attempt to crush the P.A.A. and impose a new government. Not many nations wanted in, only the Rhineland and Luxembourg officially joined. Paris was fragile, their army barely a shadow of what it had once been. They had a year to rebuild, it was hardly enough. Still, the small front favored them. Even with fewer divisions, they could stack their defenses effectively, making every advance costly for the coalition. The coalition's push westward was slow, painful, and widely criticized. Nations condemned Rhineland and Luxembourg, marking the Fourth Coalition as unpopular almost from the start. In the end, Luxembourg gained a little land, barely noticeable, and the P.A.A. survived, battered but still standing. The Fourth Coalition would be the most forgotten in history. The German state had been mostly ignored, a minor player in the chaos of Europe. That changed after it invaded Berlin and East Berlin years ago. When the old dictator died of lung cancer, his son Wolf Reuben took control. He had one clear goal: reunite Germany. New laws forced women into factories, while men joined the army, and the entire nation was mobilized for war. Northern Germany was first. It was a small country with little population, no real army to speak of. The German state moved in fast, crushing resistance within weeks. The nation was completely annexed. Next came the Central German Republic. At first, their troops tried to hold the line, but German blitzkrieg tactics tore through defenses. Cities fell one by one, the country collapsed, and the Central German Republic was fully absorbed. Unrest flared, but the German state crushed it with force. In the Balkans, expansion moved quickly through deserted lands, reaching Greece. New nations formed as settlements declared independence. Eastern Europe saw a similar push into Ukraine, giving birth to a few new countries there. Meanwhile, Moscow quietly grew in power. While Europe was focused on Western conflicts, Moscow prepared in silence. What they were planning remained a mystery, but it was about to shake the continent. The German state's next move was Hamburg. This time they weren't alone. The Danish state joined on their side. The real reason was obvious. Denmark just wanted territory. Hamburg fought harder than Germany's previous targets, managing to slow the advance in several areas, but they didn't have the manpower or equipment to hold long-term. Within a few weeks, Hamburg's defenses collapsed, and the government agreed to surrender negotiations. They managed to avoid total annexation, but the terms were still heavy. The German state took land in the south. Denmark took territory in the north. What remained became a puppet state, officially renamed the Hamburgian state. Not long after that, the German state invaded the People's Republic of Friesland. What caught people off guard wasn't the invasion itself. It was Rhineland's reaction. Friesland had been a close ally sitting right near their border, yet Rhineland didn't even issue a public statement. Whether it was fear or something happening behind the scenes, nobody really knew. Militarily, Friesland didn't last long. The German state had settled into a clear strategy by now: hit weaker neighbors fast before they could coordinate any defense. Friesland lost territory quickly and eventually capitulated, becoming another puppet. It was renamed the State of Friesland. Around the same time, the P.A.A. made an announcement that surprised almost everyone. They had successfully landed forces in Britain. There hadn't been any visible buildup, which made the news hit crazier. This was their fourth historical attempt to reach the islands. The first ended in disaster decades ago. The second never launched. The third also ended in a disaster. But this time, it worked. England became a puppet state, and civilians started to be shipped regularly to secure a new colony-type puppet in England. Then, out of nowhere, another Prussia-Warsaw conflict broke out. Warsaw declared war first, beginning the Third Prussian-Warsaw War, driven by years of border disputes and political hostility. Both nations were strong, so from the start, it was expected to be a tough fight. Warsaw made early gains into Prussian territory, but Prussia stabilized the line fairly quickly. With a larger population base, they could sustain losses better and began pushing back. Over time, they crossed into Warsaw territory themselves. Neither side could maintain momentum, though. Advances were followed by counterattacks, and the front shifted back and forth for months. Eventually, both governments agreed to negotiations in Berlin. The treaty ended the war without territorial changes. It was a draw, but tensions between the two countries were worse than ever. Most observers assumed another conflict was inevitable. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. About a month later, Prussia and Warsaw announced they were unifying into a single state, the Prusso-Polish Commonwealth. There was never a clear explanation for how or why it happened so suddenly. Many suspected outside interference, especially from the German state, since a stable eastern neighbor benefited them strategically. But nothing was ever confirmed publicly. Inside the new country, the first years were chaotic. Political factions clashed constantly, the populations didn't trust each other, and leadership struggled to keep things stable. By most expectations, it shouldn't have lasted, yet somehow it held together. The Fifth P.A.A. coalition started when several nations declared war almost at once. The Kingdom of the Rhineland, Greater Luxembourg, the Sixth French Republic, the Normandy State, the French Apocalyptic Authority, Lyon, Nice, Bern, and Venice all joined in. And everyone knew this one was supposed to settle things for good. Unlike earlier coalitions, this one formed fast. There wasn't much hesitation. Most governments already believed another war with the P.A.A. was inevitable. The problem was timing. The P.A.A. wasn't weak anymore. It was probably at its strongest point ever. Their economy was stable, their military modernized, and their tech sector was ahead of most neighbors. On top of that, they had built a close partnership with the German state. Germany joined quickly, and when they did, they brought allies. The Danish state came in, along with the Prusso-Polish Commonwealth and several German puppets. What started as a coalition against the P.A.A. was quickly turning into something much bigger. That left the Rhineland in a rough spot. Geographically, the P.A.A. in the west, and the German state pushing from the east. Strategically, their job became holding Germany back, so the rest of the coalition could focus on the P.A.A. It was a difficult assignment from the start. Even with a strong army, fighting two-front pressure like that was never sustainable long-term. Amsterdam and its puppet Antwerp eventually joined the coalition too. Their military was well organized, and they immediately focused on resisting German advances in the north. Early on, the P.A.A. stayed mostly defensive. Their front was wide but still under control. They launched limited offensives into Luxembourg, though, testing weak spots and eventually pushing all the way to the capital. At the same time, Germany hit the Rhineland hard. Defensive lines that were expected to hold much longer collapsed faster than anyone predicted. It suddenly looked like the coalition's strongest member might not last. Pressure built from both sides. While Germany advanced from the east, P.A.A. forces kept hitting Rhineland positions from the west, forcing them to stretch thinner and thinner. German strategy stayed consistent: fast armored pushes followed by encirclements. Several major cities fell this way, sometimes before defenders even realized how exposed they were. Amsterdam's connection to the rest of the coalition got cut during these operations. German troops pushed north steadily after that. It wasn't quick, but the direction of the war was obvious. Germany was gaining ground almost everywhere they focused. Luxembourg eventually capitulated to the P.A.A. Once that front closed, P.A.A. planners shifted focus fully onto France. Instead of repeating the blitzkrieg style everyone expected, they switched tactics: divide and conquer instead of one massive push. France hadn't really prepared for that kind of war. The capital fell without deciding much militarily. Government functions had already shifted elsewhere. But symbolically, it hit morale hard. P.A.A. forces kept advancing afterward. The French Apocalyptic Authority ended up cut off entirely. They surrendered almost immediately once P.A.A. troops crossed into their territory. The Rhineland kept getting pushed back, but at least their capital was still safe for now. The Dutch front was handed off to Prusso-Polish forces, and honestly, that situation didn't last long. Amsterdam was strong economically and defensively, but manpower was always their weak spot. Once the pressure built up, they couldn't sustain it. Amsterdam fell, Antwerp soon after. Another front closed, but the war was nowhere near slowing down. Down south, things escalated fast. Rome and Umbria officially joined the war on the side of the P.A.A. and the German state. For Rome, it looked like easy expansion, and Umbria backed them completely, like always. Venice got caught completely off guard and was swept aside before they could properly react. After that, Rome started pushing slowly into Nice. At the same time, the Crown and Cross Confederacy entered on the anti-coalition side. They were stuck down in southern Iberia, so they couldn't directly help much in Europe, but they made a big move elsewhere, landing in Morocco. That gave them control over the entrance to the Mediterranean, which was going to matter a lot later. By this point, everyone knew what this war really was. The Fifth Coalition, but definitely the last one. This wasn't just another conflict. This was basically the decider. Whoever came out on top wouldn't just win territory. They'd dominate Europe outright. Every previous coalition, every buildup, all of it was leading to this. And realistically, once this ended, the only power left that could seriously challenge the winner would be the Kingdom of Moscow. The Rhineland finally collapsed. Their capital fell, and not long after, they surrendered. A week later, the Sixth French Republic followed. At that point, it genuinely looked finished. The coalition was done. The war basically decided. And then, completely out of nowhere, the Kingdom of Moscow declared war on both sides. Not just the coalition, not just the P.A.A. Literally everyone. Their forces pushed through Minsk and straight into the Prusso-Polish Commonwealth, instantly flipping the entire situation. For the coalition, it looked like a second chance, even if technically they were now at war with Moscow too. For the P.A.A., the German state, and Prusso-Poland, though, this was a nightmare scenario. Troops started scrambling east immediately, but it was already clear this wasn't going to be a normal front. Stopping Moscow turned out to be nearly impossible. They'd spent decades quiet, industrializing, modernizing, preparing, and now it showed. Warsaw fell first, fast enough to miss if you were a neighboring nation. The Commonwealth basically fractured under the pressure. splitting back into Warsaw and Prussia. But it didn't matter. Moscow rolled over both separately just as easily. Organization broke down. It was just that nobody expected this. German reinforcements finally arrived, but they walked straight into disaster. Moscow forces encircled Berlin almost immediately, cutting off command before Germany could stabilize the front. City after city fell, resistance weakened, and eventually the German state outright capitulated to Moscow. Over in the P.A.A., panic was setting in. Nobody had planned for this. Moscow hadn't even been part of the conversation earlier in the war, and now they were tearing through Europe. They pushed into Paris-occupied Rhineland. Allies started backing out. Rome exited the war, keeping Venice as a puppet and calling it a win. The Crown and Cross Confederacy did the same, stepping away. The anti-coalition structure was basically disintegrating in real time. Moscow forces eventually reached the P.A.A.'s core borders. To their credit, the P.A.A. did fight hard. But the numbers Moscow was throwing in were unreal for that era. Hundreds of thousands broke into Western Europe. Defensive lines broke one after another. Paris was captured, and not long after, the P.A.A. surrendered. After that, it was mostly cleanup. Nice, Bern, and Lyon were the last holdouts, but none of them had the strength to last long. Moscow overran them quickly. What made it shocking wasn't just the victory, it was how fast it all happened once they committed. Decades of silence, then a single campaign that ended Europe. The fifth P.A.A. coalition was over, and Moscow came out as the clear winner, a very unexpected winner. When it was all said and done, Moscow justified the invasion as regional security. The war had grown too destructive, too unstable, and someone had to step in before it spiraled even further. Whether people believed that or not didn't really matter. The fighting had stopped, and Moscow had proven they could end a continental war. That finale changed how everyone looked at them. Moscow went from a distant Eastern power to something nobody could afford to ignore again. Still, they didn't try to annex all of Europe, and publicly, they said they never planned to. After a string of treaties, troop withdrawals began. Bit by bit, they pulled back east, leaving Europe shaken but technically independent. Europe came out of it completely reshaped. New borders, new states, new tensions already starting to simmer. The P.A.A. technically gained some territory, but their military restrictions made them a shadow of what they'd been. The German state was gone entirely, and the old Prusso-Warsaw Commonwealth split back into Prussia and Warsaw, almost like history just snapped its finger. The war was over, and the world would never truly be the same. But it only set the stage for something even crazier, something that you'd have to stay around for, something that only Episode 3 could offer.
So I'm not gonna lie, I literally bought this whole mic just for this voice reveal, and it's low-key not good. So, but I'm gonna deal with it though, because I still need to do a voice reveal. So yeah. So I can talk about a few things. First of all, this episode, I hope you had a fun time watching it. For me, it was really fun making it. Maybe a little complicated. Maybe it took a little long making the script, making the maps, doing the voice, but you know, it was still really fun. And talking about the voice, obviously I used an AI voice. Some of you recognized it, a lot of you didn't, so which is good. That it was a good voice. But either way, it still is not my real voice. It's not my personality. It's not me. I mean, I'm 16, so it's, I have like a teen voice. It's not like anything special, but it's just not a good voice for narration in general. So like, I use an AI voice. But I do plan to go into future videos in like maybe next month or this month maybe, and just maybe do a video or two of just me with my normal voice doing the actual narration and see how people like it. If people don't like it, say I stutter too much, then I won't do it no more. But people deal with it, then maybe I can try a bit more. And, I'm a little awkward on the mic right now. I'm a little awkward, but I'm gonna get used to being on the mic, so I'm not worried about that if I sound a little off. But yeah. Anyway, so now that you can see my voice, I hope you can understand that, like, you know, it's not like there is a person behind the channel. It's not just like an AI channel, which some people used to think. On my comment sections, they'll be like, "Is this an AI video, AI voice?" I'd be like, "Yeah, it's an AI voice, but it ain't an AI video. It's an AI voice, but it's not an AI idea, you know? I made the idea, I made the channel, I made the videos, but it's just a voice that's AI. And sometimes a script, I won't lie. Sometimes a script, but sometimes. So, yeah. But I just want to say that I have so many ideas this year for this channel. And it's becoming really hard how many ideas I have for this channel, because I want to upload a video almost like every day. Because I just have so many ideas, you know, like I have, so, not to like say too much, but like I want to do 3 shows this year. Post-Apoc is one of them. That's the first show. I want to do 3 shows this year, including, well, no, and technically 4 shows if you count the one I want to do with Wixo or This Pro. You know, if you see my post, you know I want to do a show like that. And then I have just so many video ideas. I have so many video ideas that are like almost destined to like be viral. And like I have studied the algorithm so much. Like seriously, I just have so much hope for this channel. I'm not gonna lie. Especially if I start using my voice, people will understand that like there is a person behind the channel. It's not just an AI channel, even though the voice is AI. Man, I'm not gonna lie. I just have so many ideas for this channel this year, and next year I even have ideas for next year. Next year I have, oh my gosh, I'm not even gonna cap, man. I have a lot of ideas for the channel. But anyway, so I've been yapping for a bit much anyway. So you know, I'm gonna end the video, but subscribe, like the video, so comment what you think about the video, what you think about, you know, maybe my voice reveal, maybe my voice reveal, maybe my voice reveal. I stutter a bit much, as you know. You know, I'll get used to it. But yeah, see you.